the election been on October 27th, I'd be your president. I was on the way to winning until the combination of Jim Comey's letter on October 28th and Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me but got scared off.
That was Hillary Clinton blaming FBI Director James Comey as well as Russia and WikiLeaks for her loss to Donald Trump last year. The former Secretary of State was at a Women for Women International event in New York yesterday. Mrs. Clinton's comments were heard on Capitol Hill, and President Trump, he took to Twitter responding. He said FBI Director Comey was the best thing that ever happened to Hillary Clinton, in that he gave her a free pass from any bad deeds. The phony Trump-Russia story was an excuse used by Democrats as justification for losing the election. Perhaps Trump just ran a great campaign. This echoes what Trump told me last month.
Don't forget, when Jim Comey came out, he saved Hillary Clinton. People don't realize that. He saved her life. Director Comey was very, very good to Hillary Clinton, that I can tell you. If he weren't, she would be right now going to trial.
And of course, what Hillary Clinton said yesterday was if the election were held on the 27th of October, then she would have actually won.
Yeah.
No.
Kellyanne Conway's tweet's my favorite, actually. She said, "You ignored Wisconsin, called us deplorable, irredeemable, had oodles of money and no message, lost to a better candidate," and then she was like, "from a woman in the White House," which is the ultimate dig. Look at that.
Yeah. Kellyanne nailed it. There's so many other things that Clinton is just kind of ignoring, which is fine by Republicans, because this cognitive dissonance is actually only going to hurt Democrats and help Republicans.
Joining us right now to talk more about it is the former FBI counterintelligence special agent and associate dean of admissions at Yale Law School, Asha Rangappa. Good to see you, Asha. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what do you think? What do you make of Hillary Clinton blaming the FBI director in Russia for losing the campaign last year?
Well, she lost the election. I think it makes sense that her team is going to be doing a postmortem and trying to find out where they went wrong and try to find the gaps and blame other factors. What I do think, though, is that the FBI is also doing a certain amount of postmortem after the election as well, because in making those statements, both in July on the ongoing Clinton investigation, or the decision on not to prosecute Clinton for the investigation, and the letter in October, the FBI was actually deviating from pretty strict protocols to not comment on investigations close to an election. And it has those protocols to make sure that the FBI is insulated from allegations of political bias and to be seen as a legitimate, objective law enforcement agency. And the irony here is that I believe that Director Comey wasn't acting for partisan motives. I think that he actually was also seeing those polls and thought Clinton would win.
Yeah.
And I think he was trying to protect the FBI and didn't want, after the election, for the FBI to be accused of sitting on information that would have potentially influenced how people voted. And so he miscalculated, and in doing that, he's basically opened up the FBI to the very criticism that he tried to prevent.
Right, and we all lived it and watched it in real time, of course, here as we covered the election day again very closely. But I wonder what this says about where the Democratic Party is right now. I want to get your take on this, because let's face it, she had a private server in her basement that was the underlying issue that people were unnerved about. The Clinton Foundation and all of its connections around that. There was an FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton, and then there's the fact that she really didn't have an economic message, which you know, Trump's economic message really resonated.
And they're still trying to con women into believing that she didn't get elected because of misogyny, which she was asked about in that interview. And instead of being a warrior for women, she's an albatross around our necks. She is an anchor. And until the Democratic Party figures that out, because she is leading the charge in terms terms of victim chic these days, where every woman is a victim and they can't show grace, dignity, and strength in the face of defeat, which she didn't even on an election night. She couldn't face her most ardent supporters on that evening. Until they figure that out in terms of the gender politics going on, they're doomed to lose and they're doomed to fail.
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, what does this say about the party, that there's still not an admission of the lack of economic message in her campaign and the other issues?
Quietly, though, behind the scenes, people who supported Bernie Sanders, who didn't want to get behind her because she was such a lousy candidate and a well-known liar, that they do know there needs to be a change, and they want that. But again, it's the leadership of the Democratic Party. Is Tom Perez any different than Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
Maybe he's got a lot more curse words.
The Democratic Party is terribly centralized, and so you've got a leadership structure there that controls the money, that controls, remember, they're the party with the superdelegates who can sort of, there may be a popular uprising, but you don't have a prayer if you're a Democrat to get that through. And they, until the upper echelons of the Democratic Party decide that they had a problem, they're not going to be confronting the realities that Dagan is outlining so well.
I'm glad you mentioned the superdelegates, because remember during the election we were all coming in saying, wow, all the superdelegates, they're all in for Hillary. I mean, these numbers are showing a different story.
It's a rigged election.
You weren't buying it. I know that. But Asha, what about that? I mean, President Trump, meanwhile, and Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke for the first time yesterday since the U.S. airstrike against Syria last month. The White House released a statement saying this: President Trump and President Putin agreed that the suffering in Syria has gone on far too long, and that all parties must do all they can to end the violence. The U.S. and Russia are set to begin ceasefire talks in the war-torn country, and President Trump and Putin will meet in Germany in July. The leaders are discussing the North Korean nuclear threat as the U.S. brings a controversial anti-missile system online in the South. What do you make of that, Asha?
Well, I think that the readout of that conversation didn't seem to me to substantially alter the relationship between U.S. and Russia since our strike against the Assad air base in early April. There's still a lot of tension there. The Russians still believe that strike was in violation of international law. And in the background, we have this investigation going on into Russian interference in our election and potential Russian contact with associates of the Trump campaign. And that's causing tension as well. It's not going to go away anytime soon. So I think that, the conversation didn't tank and it didn't, go in a negative direction. But I think it made a modest step in a direction on the Syrian issue.
All right, we'll leave it there. Asha, good to see you. Thanks very much for weighing in.
Thank you.
All right, Rasha Rangappa joining us. Coming up, a battle in the Lone Star State over sanctuary cities. The details on that Texas bill that could punish officials who do not comply with federal immigration laws. Plus, Starbucks unveiling a whole new Frappuccino to rival its popular unicorn drink. The new flavor straight ahead. Back in a moment.